welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari holds talks with his Benin Republic counterpart, Yayi, 800 Wenonwa soldiers to join war against terror. Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka warns against ignoring those demanding for the Biafra state. He says government should listen to them. Freedom appears far for former National Security Advisor Sambo Dasuki as government lawyer demands withdrawal of bail application. And Republican presidential hopeful Donald Trump provokes condemnation by calling for a ban on Muslim visitors to the United States.
On business news, Supreme Court adjourns suit filed by 36 states against the federal government over the maintenance of the excess crude account and the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
And on sports news tonight, Nigeria's search for a ticket to next year's Olympics continues. Dream Team 6 clashed with Senegal in the Under-23 Cup of Nations semi-final.
We begin tonight with what seems to be a renewed effort to end Boko Haram activities in the West African sub-region. President Muhammadu Buhari and his Beninois counterpart met behind closed doors today at the presidential villa in Abuja. Meanwhile, President Buhari said securing a healthy relationship with neighboring countries will help improve the security and economic well-being of the sub-region. And President Yayi announced the deployment of 800 troops to help Nigeria fight insurgency. President Buhari also used the opportunity to advise the outgoing president of Benin to ensure a peaceful and transparent presidential election in the country next year. According to President Buhari, what happens in Benin is of particular interest to Nigeria because we are very good neighbors. I'd like to congratulate the president for successfully completing 2 terms in office and his plan to hand over power after the elections in February. In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari has agreed to host the Economic Community of West African States and Heads of Government. The president says the summit will hold 9 days from today and vital issues bordering on security and the economy will be discussed. He says this is the time to seek cooperation of the sub-region in fighting the scourge of terrorism and the illegal activities in the Gulf of Guinea, which he says currently undermine the West African economy. In September, President Buhari hosted an extraordinary summit of the Economic Community of West African States Authorities Heads of State and Government. The main item on the agenda of the summit was the political situation which had caused violence and unrest in Burkina Faso. Now, the trial of the former National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, over allegations of illegal possession of arms has again been stalled following the filing of a preliminary objection by counsel to Colonel Dasuki, challenging the application by the federal government to revoke the bail granted to the former National Security Advisor. At the resumed trial, lawyer to the federal government, Mr. Oladipo Okpeshe, told the courts that he has 2 applications seeking to revoke the bail earlier granted to the accused person by the court and another application seeking to stop further execution of the order of the court directing that the passport of the accused person be released to him. He, however, told the court that he is constrained in moving the application as he was served with the defendant's objection in court and needed time to respond to the preliminary objection filed by a lawyer to Colonel Dasuki. He subsequently applied for an adjournment. Now, the lawyer to the former National Security Advisor, Mr. Joseph Daudu, did not oppose the application for adjournment, saying the prosecutor is entitled to adequate time to enable him respond to objections raised by him. With the consent of counsel, the trial judge, Justice Adeni Ademola, adjourned the trial to the 20th of January 2016 for hearing of the preliminary objection and other pending applications. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka has emphasized the need for the country's leadership to approach the agitations of Biafra in a more diplomatic way. In an exclusive interview on our program, Channels Book Club, Professor Soyinka said that every ethnic group should be made to feel like part of the country and good old dialogue is the way to go.
At the time, I wrote an article, I remember at the time, during the war, and I said, Biafra cannot be defeated. People misunderstood what I was saying. I'm saying that once an idea has taken hold, you cannot destroy that idea. You may destroy the people, the carriers of that idea on the battlefield. Yes, this is known. But ultimately, it's not the end of the story. So let's not take this position of don't even talk it. Under my watch, this will never happen. Don't say things like that. Go into that environment and ask, what is it that we can do to make you content, to make you happy, to make you feel part of this entity. There's no need. These are the advantages of staying. Listen to some other Biafrans and ask them why they want to stay. This is what we are ready to push as the overall governance authority in this area. But don't go around saying the sovereignty of this nation is indivisible, is non-negotiable. All that kind of language, for me, it only makes matters worse.
Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka. In the meantime, detained director of Radio Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has challenged his continued detention by the Department of State Services despite a court order granting him bail since October the 19th. Lawyer to Mr. Kanu, Vincent Obete, argued the motion on the enforcement of his fundamental human rights before Justice Adeniyi Ademola of the Federal High Court in Abuja. He asked the court to set aside its earlier order granting the DSS leave to detain his client for 90 days, pending the conclusion of an investigation into terrorism financing. Mr. Obete also prayed the court to strike out the case against his client, pending the outcome of the criminal charge brought against Mr. Kanu at the Chief Magistrate Court. After hearing the arguments, Justice Adeniyi adjourned the suit to December the 14th to enable the federal government's lawyer respond to the application. A coalition of civil society organizations have led a protest outside the National Assembly premises, asking for the discontinuation of the passage of the anti-social media bill. The Senate last Wednesday passed for second reading a bill seeking 2 years imprisonment with an option of 2 million naira fine for any Nigerian who posts abusive statements on social media. The protesters say by criminalizing free speech, the bill directly contravenes the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Nigeria's 1999 Constitution. The protesters demanded to meet with the leadership of the Senate to express their concerns. And the delegation from the Senate met with the protesters and promised to present their demands during plenary.
From a distance, a group of protesters marching through the streets of Abuja. They move purposely towards the National Assembly. Besides the inscriptions on their placards, the ribbons they wear are vivid indicators of why they are at the National Assembly.
What is the parameter in which the Senate want to determine who is abusing who on social media?
These civil rights activists are firmly opposed to the passage of a bill which they say is intended to gag the social media. The Senate last week, Wednesday, passed through second reading the frivolous petitions bill, which included a clause that criminalizes posting abusive statements on social media. The protesters demand to meet with the leadership of the Senate from where the bill originated from. Moments later, they are allowed to enter the National Assembly. Members of different civil society organizations have finally been allowed to come into the National Assembly premises, where they intend to meet with the leadership of the Senate to express reservations over the passage of an anti-social media bill, which they say intends to gag the social media and prevent freedom of expression of Nigerians on the social media and on the internet. At the last gate leading directly to the National Assembly, two lawmakers from the Senate meet with the protesters. But the activists demand entry into the National Assembly. They are granted this demand.
During the campaign, we all used the social media. Then it was important to be used. Today, you are in the House. You feel the same platform that brought you should be clamped down.
Senator Shehu Sani speaks on behalf of the Senate.
We are going to take your message without editing to the Nigerian Senate that Nigerians are saying nay to social media bill.
A lawyer tells Channels Television that Nigerians must resist this proposed law by the Senate.
If in reality it is trying to curtail abusive speech, that is already captured under tort law. Okay, so you have laws like libel, slander, defamation under those laws. We don't see any reason for it, and more so, we feel the Senate and indeed the National Assembly as a whole have more pressing issues to look at.
These civil rights activists are not the only ones opposed to the bill. The Nigeria Labour Congress, the Media Rights Agenda, and other civil society groups have condemned the proposed law, describing it as a threat to democracy. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, Lagos government begins compilation of its laws, and I'll be joined in a moment by the State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Mr. Adeniji Kazeem. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.